what I wanted is to create in kids' minds how much knowledge they have compared with these children. If you said to a kid, you're going to Venus in a spaceship, today, a kid would have some knowledge about that. They'd have a knowledge of the solar system, they'd have a knowledge of how spaceship work, all of that. These kids had nothing, and nobody had anything. And so for almost a year, they were holed up in their ships without any sense of knowing where they were going. And probably Arthur Phillip was the only one who had any sense of it, and his was very vague. I've used nicknames for all of the officers, and I can identify them all, because the kids wouldn't have known their names, and it wasn't important to them anyway. They gave them names that suited their personalities and their looks. And so I started it in the middle of the 90s, and it kept going back on the back burner because I had other things that I had to write or wanted to write, or studies that I had to do, or whatever. And it's been in and out of the drawer a number of times, and it's now finally done. So I feel rather relieved. The first draft was about 45,000 words, and I had much more about the women in it, because they interested me. You know, this was a ship with 107 women on it, all crammed in together. You know, some of them just petty thieves like Jack's mum, and others murderers like Madge, who chopped up her husband and fed him to the fishes. And there was, on the actual Lady Penman, there was a mad woman. There was also a woman who was over 80. There were several who gave birth. There were a group who broke in through the bulkhead to the sailors' quarters. There were all sorts of people, and I was including a lot of them, a lot of their stories in with it, which, when I thought about it and gave something, had advice from someone else, kids weren't going to be interested in that. And so it's now 25,000 words, and all of that stuff has gone. Or just little bits. I mean, we've still got Madge, and there's a lovely scene where they all have to strip off and have their baths. Getting Madge into a tub was not, it took several redcoats to push her in, sort of thing. So, and they found Dolly's baby that way too. Yeah, I've put little bits of the women in, but not great swags of that, which I had in the first draft. So it's been through several drafts, and while Jack wouldn't have exactly sounded like that, he would have had a much more Cockney accent. Knowing it was written for children, I've accommodated a sense of an accent with the me mum and things like that. But that's as far as I've gone, because it'd be too hard for kids to take in. Yeah, and you know, you're wanting kids that perhaps aren't that interested in reading to be able to engage. That's one of them. At Tenerife, they took on all these pumpkins. Now, the English don't eat pumpkin; it's a cattle food. But they took all these pumpkins on, and the sailors stacked them up. And so, because you've got the mountain in Tenerife, the tall, thin mountain, they reckoned the stack looked like the mountain, and so they climbed it. But of course, once they got to the top, it wiggled, and the pumpkins all fell down, and the pipsqueak turned up just at the right time and started yelling at them. And of course, when they got to Rio de Janeiro, they saw a slave market, which, you know, I mean, they wouldn't have seen really black people before. and them getting sold really frightened them.